Fifth grade, Chapter 1, Lesson 1, Place Value and Patterns. Investigate. You can use these 10 blocks to understand the relationships among place value positions. Use a large cube for 1,000. So here's our large cube for 1,000. Okay. Here is our flat for 100. Our long for 10. And our small cube for 1, right? Okay. And then, of course, they also have our picture here on our paper. So complete the comparisons below to describe the relationship from one place value position to the next place value position. Look at the long and compare it to the small cube. The long is how many times as much as the small cube. So how many of these little small cubes would it take to make that long? Even. 10, right? Okay. So we write 10 here. Oh, we don't want yellow. Okay. So 10 times as much as a small cube. Look at the flat and compare it to the long. So here we have our flat and here we have our long. How many of these longs would it take to make this flat, Regan? 10. Look at the large cube and compare it to the flat. So we have our large cube here. How many of these flats would it take to make this large cube? 10. Look at the flat and compare it to the large cube. The flat is length of the large cube. So instead of how many of these would it take, okay, we know it takes how many? 10. But if we wanted to know what fraction this is of the large cube, what would that be? 1/10. Look at the long and compare it to the flat. So we have our long again, and we have our flat, okay? So once again, what fraction of this long is of the flat? 1/10. Look at the small cube and compare it to the long. So once again, we have our long and we have our cube. So how many of these little cubes does it take to get a long? 10. So this would be what part of this? 1/10. 1/10. Draw conclusions. 1. Describe the pattern you see when you move from a lesser place value position to the next greater place value position. So we said when we move from a lesser place value to a greater place value, we are going 10 times higher. Number 2, describe the pattern you see when you move from a greater place value position to the next lesser place value position. When we move from a greater place value to the next lesser place value, we are dividing by 10 and only getting 1/10 of the value. Make connections. You can use your understanding of place value patterns and a place value chart to write numbers that are 10 times as much as or 1/10 of any given number. So they give us a little chart here and it says 300. And it says if we did 10 times as much of 300, what would that be? 3,000 because we go higher, right? We'd add 1 0 to the end, correct? In 4th grade, you learn when you multiply by 10 or 100, or you divide by 10 or 100, you either add that many decimal places or you take away that many, right? Okay? So, and then we have 300 again, but they want to know what 1/10 of 300 is. So, when they want to know 1/10, do they want to know a part or do they want a bigger number? Part. They want a part, right? So, in this case, we're not going to add a 0, we're going to knock off a 0, right? Or take 1 off. So what would our answer be for the other one? 30, right? So use the steps below to complete the table. Write the given number in the place value chart. So they give us number 10, all right? So 10 times as much as 10. So am I going higher or lower? Higher, right? So right here, just write higher. You want a higher number. And then if you want 1/10 of something, you want to go lower because they're saying 1/10 of 10. So this would be a lower number than your original number. So going back to 10 times as much would be what? 10 times as much as 10 would be 100. And 1/10 of 100 would be 1. Okay? Now, and then it says use the place value chart to write the 10 times as much and then the 1/10. And we did that, right? But now we need to go to 70. So what is 10 times as much as 70? So basically you're going to read this little column and then come over here to your original number and add that in. All right? So 10 times as much as 70 is 700 because I take my original number and add a 0, right? Then 1/10 of 70, they want to part, right? So this time I'm not going to add a 0, I'm going to
Subtract.
well, or take it off, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, see ya, you're not here anymore. So 1/10 of 70 is
7.
Okay. All right, 10 times as much as 9,000. So am I adding a 0 or am I taking away a 0? Adding, right? So my answer is
90,000.
90,000. Okay. Then 1/10 of 9,000. Am I adding or taking away?
Taking away.
Taking away. So I'm taking away a 0. I'm going to say see ya. And what's my answer?
900.
900. Alright, so Sharon, show, complete the sentence. So now this time they don't have a chart, they have it in a sentence, okay? So this is 500 is 10 times as much as, alright? So this is already your answer. So over here in your charts, you were finding your answers, right? Okay, this time they already give you your answer in your chart. So they already give you your answer that you would have found in your chart. So basically, we're going to do the opposite of what it says. So we see 10 times, and we would automatically think we need to do what? Add a 0. But in this case, we have the answer, so we're going to do the opposite. Kind of like in number sentences, when you're looking for the missing variable. Okay, so if I had like 15 plus something equals 22, I'd have to figure out what that missing variable was. Does anybody know what that is? I said 15 plus something equals 22. 7, right? Okay, so I'd have to find that missing thing. So it's an addition sign, so I had to do the opposite and I had to subtract, right? So in this case, it's the same thing. You're going to kind of do the opposite because you're already given the answer, all right? So 50 is 10 times as much as, so if I do the opposite of 10 times, I'm finding a part, so 1/10. So what's 1/10 of 50? Or 500? What is it? 50. Okay. 20,000 is 1/10 of. So this is only a part of something. So we see 1/10, and we need to do the opposite. So what would be, instead of finding 1/10, what would be the opposite of that? Putting another 0, right? So what's my answer?
200,000.
200,000. Okay. Number 3, 900 is 1/10 of. So they want to know what the little part 900 is of a bigger number, right? So instead of finding 1/10, I'm going to add another 0. So my answer is
9,000.
9,000. 600 is 10 times as much as, so in this case they have a part, right? So they want to know what the little part is. So instead of adding a 0, I'm going to
Subtract.
take away a 0, and my answer is
60.
60. Okay, use place value patterns to complete the table. So once again, we would say 10 times as much as 10 is 100. So once again, we're going to say this is a higher section, and this is a lower. So 1/10 of 10 is 1. 10 times as much as 3,000 is 30,000. 1/10 of 3,000 is 300. 10 times as much as 800 is 8,000. 1/10 of 800 is 80. 10 times as much as 50 is 500. 1/10 of 50 is 10. Okay, so once again, our 10 times as much is higher, and our 1/10 of is lower. So 10 times as much as 400 is 4,000. 1/10 of 400 is 40. 10 times as much as 90 is 900. 1/10 of 90 is 9. 10 times as much as 6,000 is 1/10 of 6,000 is 10 times as much as 200 is 1/10 of 200 is
20.
So the hot problems, these are a little more challenging, right? Complete the sentence with 100 or 1,000. So 200 is blank times as much as 2. So basically they went from 2 to 200. So what would they have had to do to get from there? Times what? 100. And remember, we're either going to put 100 or 1,000 in there. So they had to take 2 times 100, and then they were able to get 2,000 or 200. Okay? Number 14. They went from 4,000. So 4,000 is blank times as much as 4. So how did they get from 4 to 4,000?
1,000.
Times 1,000, right? And so we put 1,000 here. Okay. Then we have 700,000 is blank times as much as 700. So how did they get from 700 to 700,000? So basically, how many more zeros are there? 3. So then we would say 1,000. 600 is blank times as much as 6. So how did they get from 6 to 600? Times 100, because there's 2 extra zeros, right? 50,000 is blank times as much as 500. So how did they get from 500 to 50,000?
1,000.
How many extra zeros is there?
2.
There's only 2 extra zeros, so it would be 100.
10,000.
Okay, 30,000 is blank times as much as 30. So how do we get from 30 to 30,000? Times 1,000, because there's 3 extra zeros, right? Number 19, write math. Explain how you can use place value patterns to describe how 50 and 5,000 compare. Since 5,000 has 2 more zeros than 50, we know 5,000 is 100 times larger than 50. Because basically like you learned in 4th grade, however many zeros you have means if that's 100, 10, 1,000, right? Okay, by the number of zeros.